Hi, welcome to Celebrity Interviews with Paul. I have with me Mindy Utay, who is a psychoanalyst and social worker working in New York City. She comes to us as a friend of Terry Halbert. Welcome, Mindy.
Hi, everybody. Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, it is good to have you. I understand you're coming to us from your up north place in Connecticut, having fled the city in the midst of everything. So how's the pandemic treating you these days?
Mhm. Well, I have to say, being up here in Northwest Connecticut has been wonderful. It's a rural area, and right now everything is in bloom, and I feel almost, embarrassed to be in such a beautiful area when I know that so many friends and family are back in the city, really, seeing it much more up close and feeling the stress and the tension. But it's nice to be here. It really is. And I'm doing my practice remotely, so very involved and engaged with everyone back in the city, but grateful to be here.
I'm sure it's nice to get up there. We in Michigan, of course, everybody likes to go up north, which could be as close as an hour away or as far as 6 to 10 hours away, depending on what lake you choose to make your up north place. So we certainly resonate with that.
Okay.
Now, your practice, what kind of age groups do you work with? What kinds of folks do you work with?
I have an adult practice, and I don't see anybody who isn't in college. So it's 18 and over is usually the youngest. And then I have some patients that are, I'd say, in their 70s. I have a few
Hmm.
patients in their 70s, which is very nice. So
Hmm.
it's a wide range of people. And I do also see couples. I was a lawyer in my prior life, and so I'm good at managing conflict in a room,
Yep,
articulating different sides and trying to keep everybody sort of talking and feeling
hmm,
connected and calm, and
sure,
to work through conflict
good.
productively, something I like to do a lot.
Well, that's helpful because there's a lot of conflict these days. So
So, right.
now, now we were talking a little bit about neurophysiology and the way like our bodies and our minds connect and things like that. We're in a time, obviously, when there's lots of stressors. There's the disease stressors, there's the of COVID-19, there's the stressors, all the economic stressors that, even if it's not impacting you personally, you're feeling it because it's out there, the tension is out there. And then of course we're in a time of racial unrest and protest, which reminds us of all kinds of things. We have all these kinds of pressures. What does that do to our bodies?
Mhm.
And how do our bodies react? And then how do we kind of manage that emotionally and mentally?
Well, when we're under stress, even normal stress, our body reacts. So the stress of everyday living causes our body to emit certain neurochemicals, which help us respond. So, if a taxi or a car is coming at us, we want to be able to move. And so there's times stress is good. We have to make decisions and we have to, take on responsibilities. Right now, with all of the stressors that seem to be outside of our control. So there's a pandemic that we don't understand, people getting sick, some very, very ill. There's all the economic instability, plus the racial tension, the violence in the streets. So it's now stress building upon stress and building upon stress. And what happens is the body starts to be in a stressful mode constantly. So there is never relief from the stress. And once stress builds and becomes chronic stress, so you don't feel any relief from it, you can start to feel a lot of physical ailments. Your blood pressure can continue to rise. You can start to have heart palpitations and cardiac distress. So the organs of your body become stressed as well. And so there's not only the emotional issues of depression and anxiety, but you can actually start to become physically ill because the body doesn't rest and doesn't
And
re-energize.
like in Michigan, and I know New York City, of course, too. We've been on a shutdown, a shelter-in-place order since like March,
Mm-hmm.
mid-March. So that's like 2.5 solid months of that, almost three, as we're moving forward,
Right.
and without kind of and even as things get eased, they're so small that And then in the midst of the back, I'm going like, well, the more people are moving, you know, that I almost want the restrictions to stay because it makes it feel safer
Makes you
in
feel
the midst of
safer.
things.
Right, right. On one hand, it does make you feel safer, but we can see how people crave human contact. You know, we're social
Mm-hmm.
beings. And so the isolation that people feel, especially people who are living alone, you know, can lead to depression and
Mm-hmm.
anxiety. So on one hand, you know that people are healthier when they have social interaction, but you know, the irony is that other people can spread the illness. And so we're
Right.
caught, you know, in a catch-22 of wanting something, but also fearing it. And that's
Yeah.
a very stressful place to be.
Yep. So what do we do? How do we deal with that? How do we
Yeah.
manage that? I mean, obviously there are healthy and unhealthy ways of managing stress. People,
Right.
you know, we can come up with a good list of unhealthy ways to manage stress, but what are some helpful ways?
Exactly. So we know all the unhealthy ways. You know, it's funny, there are a lot of people who have very good coping mechanisms. Some people have great hobbies, they love music, they have a pet. So all of these things are very healthy coping mechanisms. But for people to begin to understand that the body is constructed with coping mechanisms built inside of us, meaning that our nervous system has two parts to it. It has this sympathetic part, which makes us, you know, the fight, flight, we move.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a parasympathetic, which is the healing, soothing mechanism. And if we learn to strengthen this part of the nervous system through breathing, through meditation, through yoga, through even music and dancing, there are
Mm-hmm.
nerves that get activated and the body learns to calm itself down. And when the body calms itself down, then it sends those signals to the brain, and the brain actually starts to feel more relaxed as well. So there's an overall healing process that can go on if we realize how to access our own healing capacities within each of us. So it's
Which,
a
which,
miracle.
and I see that as a gift because on the one hand, I always have my body with me wherever I go.
Exactly.
So I don't need an extra tool to do that out of things I can come up with in my head. And like, we have two dogs. We have a 6-year-old, 115-pound rescue, Great Pyrenees, and we have this 7-month-old, 70-pound puppy we've adopted. And as much as pets might bring relaxation, some days there's not a lot of relaxation coming from the puppy George.
From the puppy, no.
Yeah.
That's true.
You know?
Right.
But yeah, you can. So what kinds of? How do we tap into that? I mean, we talked earlier too. Beforehand, I was at the dentist on Monday, one of the first back,
Mm-hmm.
and I hate the scraping sound. And I've been doing some yoga practice with my cycling that I do, and I was doing a breathing practice where I breathe in for 5, hold for 5, breathe out for 5 seconds, and then hold for 5 seconds. It helped to take me away from that horrible scraping on my teeth while I was, you know, lying there trying not to
Mm-hmm.
clench my hands and tense up
Right.
and things like that.
Well,
Um,
that's a great example because there are a lot of mindful practices. So there's meditation, there's yoga, and breathing, Tai Chi, many. But the breathing is something you can do anywhere, anytime. You do it automatically anyway, and some with small changes, like you did
mhm,
with the breathing, you can, without anybody knowing it, calm yourself down. It's so easy to
mhm.
learn and incredibly effective. So for most people who want to learn how to manage the stress today, I'm teaching breathing practices because, you know, some people can't do yoga. You have to be somewhat fit, although it's okay for many.
Yeah,
Meditation is very difficult. We all breathe, right?
right.
And so it's so easy to learn to just breathe slower,
Okay.
breathe more gently,
Hmm.
and to breathe in and out generally at the same pace. So in your example, you were under stress at the
Hmm.
dentist's office. So you did a particular breathing technique that's good for stress relief. You had that holding part of the breath, which is very good when you're feeling particularly stressed. But
Okay.
on a daily basis, to learn to breathe in the belly, not in the chest, to let your belly expand on an inhale and contract on an exhale, and breathe through your nose. And as gently as possible, no pulling in air, you know, no pushing out air,
Mhm.
muscles relax. and allow the diaphragm just to do its job, which is to expand and push up, and let the blood and the oxygen, nourish all of our organs, and then easily and gently exhale and allow all the carbon dioxide and the other unnecessary nutrients to be expelled. And once you begin to realize that you can control the breath and you can easily slow it down, then these parasympathetic systems become activated and the body relaxes.
And this isn't something, you don't have to do this for half an hour to stretch. This is, if you,
Right.
even at the beginning, a few breaths to just kind of get a sense of what you're doing. And then I imagine as you practice that and are kind of intentionally trying to be in tune with your body and how it feels and what's going on, that it becomes easier and more natural to fall into those patterns.
Well, exactly. I mean, if you learn the breath and try to practice it a little bit so that, it becomes somewhat, not habitual, but at least when you feel anxious, you go, oh, wait a minute, I can breathe and
Right.
feel better, so that it becomes a response. Then it really, almost anything that slows down the breath and takes your awareness to the breathing, which you did as well at the dentist, will immediately start a relaxation response. So it's the awareness and the slow, deep breathing. And it can be at the count.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, at whatever count feels comfortable to you. So it could be 5 or it could be 3, whatever you feel, because people breathe at different pace and some breathe easier than others. But whatever feels comfortable to you, to just bring your awareness to the breath and slow it down.
Well, and oftentimes when we get this big emotional response, part of the problem is we're too engaged in what we're focusing on. We're too close to it. We can't, and if you don't have any space or perspective on things, then your responses are usually not as good as they could be. It's part of the reason why, the best books about traumatic events aren't written immediately after the event. They're often written, a year or two later when there's been some space to reflect and things like that. And I think of John Krakauer's Into Thin Air, which was written right after a number of deaths on Mount Everest. He was part of the climbing parties, and he wrote the book immediately afterwards and even acknowledged it was probably not nearly as good as it should have been if he'd have waited a year, but he couldn't wait a year. But if we slow that down, then that allows us to kind of get perspective on the events around us, distance a little bit, and then those emotions can kind of slow down, and then we can be more thoughtful in what we do.
Absolutely. There's another practice called open focus meditation. I don't know if you know that, but it's worth to just talk about for a minute, because it's exactly what you're describing. When we focus too much on something, then the body tenses up, right? You think about, you're just focused, you're so, thinking about one thing. But if you take a step back and open your focus, just literally take in what's to the left, what's to the right, what's behind you. There's a world outside of this one lens. Right. And then the body also relaxes, and you realize that there is a whole energy field around you. And there are many other things that you could be focusing on. So, that's why watching the news too much isn't so good, because they're grabbing your attention. They're telling you what to focus on. Shut it off, focus on something else, and it really helps. So we can decide what we want to focus on, how narrowly or how broadly we want to focus.
Right. So, and that gives us, and then in the midst of a world where everything is out of control, because I have no control over COVID-19. I have no control over over Governor Whitmer, the governor of Michigan's directives and what she's authorizing. And I have no control over the general economic situation that we're living through. But I can control my own body. And to whatever degree that you have a sense of control over the world, that I would think would help relieve stress too.
Absolutely. The things that we can control, right? And the things that we want our brain to focus on. So, for many people, to put on a piece of music, and to relax and to listen to the music, it really helps calm the nervous system. And you can choose in any moment where you want to bring your attention. We have that ability. You don't have to just do the same thing over and over again.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Mindy. I always like to ask the guests on Celebrity Interviews with Paul a closing question, and that the question is, and this is, I think, a harder question these days, but always I'd like to ask, where do you find joy?
There are a lot of places. I have a lot of interests. I love to bird watch. So being out here in nature has been wonderful, and it's very quiet now, and the birds are singing, and it's just wonderful. I like to cook, and I love to laugh. So tell me a good joke, and I'm happy as a clam. So
in honor of Bill Halbert, last night, Terry's husband, Bill, who is notoriously funny. Last night I spent all night dreaming of mufflers, and I woke up exhausted.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's a good.
Yeah. It's about as funny as Bill's jokes get, but we all love listening to him laugh at them. So
right.
in honor of Bill Halbert.
In honor of Bill. Okay.
Yeah. So, well, thank you for your time, Mindy, and thank you for your wisdom and your guidance, and for being part of this esteemed group of interviewees.
Thank you for having me, Paul. I really enjoyed it.